Okay. Yeah. There you go. Present.
Right, this is take 2. I tried to do this earlier. It didn't quite work. Anyway, good morning. It's Mrs. Mack-Poole back again. You've had a week of ballads, so you should now be an expert on your knowledge. And today's lesson is going to recap on what you know. And it's also going to start looking at a new poem called The Highwayman. And we're going to have a little sneaky preview of what's to come in the next week's learning. So, as you know, you start by watching this video. I hope it's not too boring for you, but I feel it's important for me to go through this PowerPoint, make sure that you're happy with it, make sure you know what you're doing. Firstly, the check-in, same as usual. You click on the button and it gives you your check-in. You will show me what you've learned so far, and it will just recap on some knowledge you've already learned. You must make sure you do your check-in. What do we know about ballads? Well, as I said, today's lesson will recap our knowledge of ballads and introduce another ballad, The Highwayman, looking specifically at context. I'm sure you've heard of this term, context. I know we've studied it before. Let's think about what it means and how we can apply this to the poem, The Highwayman. And you'll recap on your knowledge of context in today's lesson. But before we move on to that, let's recap on what you remember about ballads and poetic devices. What are poetic devices? Well, you should have learnt this week, and you should know what they are. So we're going to look at what ballads are. You're going to complete a true and false slide. Just basically decide whether it's true or false, those statements about ballads. Then here is a glossary for you to use to help you with the next slide. Okay, this glossary are some devices that poetry uses. So there's a basic poetic device glossary. I won't read it all for you, but you know what they are: alliteration, contrast, imagery, etc. The meanings are there for you to remember. You will then move on to this task. You'll click on the task, and the task will get you to complete a chart. Okay, as I've said, the previous slide will help you complete this task. It's important you complete this task. This is our checkpoint to see what we know about poetic devices. Then we need to move on to context. If you click on here, you've got a definition of what context is. If you look at this quote, it tells you as well, without context, a piece of information is just a dot. Floats in your brain with a lot of other dots and doesn't mean a damn thing. Knowledge is information in context, connecting the dots. So, for instance, when a writer writes, everything of the time, the era, the history, this is going to be very relevant to what they've written about. So the context is basically that. So The Highwayman, okay, is the poem we're going to look at, and you're going to see a lot of contextual information that's going to be relevant to The Highwayman. But before we do that, I've got an image for you here. I'd like to think about what you see and list some adjectives to describe that image. Right, here's a little clip for you to watch. Who were the highwaymen? And this is where you will get some information about the context of the the poem. And once you've watched that, I'd like to list the 5 key points you learned from the video about the contexts and more context. Okay. Once you have watched both videos, then you need to answer the following questions. Who were the highwaymen? What do you think the ballad Highwaymen will be about? Because we haven't actually looked at that poem yet. But obviously, with the title and with the contextual information you've now received, what do you think it's going to be about? And this is an important question here. Why do you think the poet may use a ballad for this poem? Remember your knowledge about ballads, what they are, how they are formed. Think about why maybe the poet will use a ballad form to talk about the highwayman. And here's a cheeky little sneaky preview, a peek at the first stanza of the poem. You'll be looking at the whole poem. It's quite a long poem in the next few lessons in the week, but this is the first stanza from the poem. And I want you to have a look and read and see what you find from it, what you notice. Think about the structure, think about any of the language devices, the poetic techniques that we've already established in this lesson. And I would like you to really think about, what do you think will happen next in the poem? Having read the first stanza, I'd like to think about the predictions that you're going to make. And Does that first stanza follow the ballad conventions? I really would like to explain your answer in detail. What do you notice? What convention do you notice from the ballad just by looking at that very first stanza? And finally, it's time to check out. This is a very important part of the lesson. Remember, you must check out. This is where we collate your information and we make sure that you have completed your work for today's lesson. The check-in and check-out are extremely important in terms of attendance records. So please ensure you click this and check out. Well, that's it for my explanation. Have a great day. Be kind. Yes, I'll stop recording. Oh.